Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
And I'm Joe, and I'm the dad.
I'm so excited with how we've been growing on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and some of the other podcast platforms. Did you know that we are number 2 for the search term transmissia?
Wow.
We did that episode back on April 2nd, 2023, talking about the hatred of trans people rather than just the fear of trans people. Really good episode. We're coming up as number 10 for LGBTQ plus experiences. And we're 25 for offensive jokes.
Man, they must really not like my jokes.
Of course, that search term actually comes from our episode, How to Respond to Offensive LGBTQ Jokes and Comments, that we published back in February 12th of 2023.
When your sister was in 2nd grade, she came home from school one day, all excited. They were going to do a play. She even had a script. I said, read some of those lines. I want to hear what it has to say. She grabbed it, she looked at it, and she said, there's a man coming over here, and he doesn't look happy. I said, that's not the way to deliver your lines. This is the way you should. There's a man coming over here and he doesn't look happy. And she said, Dad, they don't do it like that. But I said, you're going to do it like that. I had, of course, been in many shows myself. I'd been in almost 40 shows at the time.
You were trying to help her learn.
Exactly. I wanted her to be an actress, not just another 2nd grader that delivers a line like a 2nd grader would do that hasn't ever performed before. I wanted what was best for her. I knew what was best for her, and I was going to make sure she did it. Well, she did, and it turned out just fine, and she actually did a very good job in the show.
I don't think she ever got to the point with those lines where you really were hoping that she would be.
No, but she was far superior to what she would have been if she would have gone out and read the lines the way she thinks, Dad, they don't do it like that.
Kids oftentimes don't understand the whole picture.
Correct.
And I, as a parent of 7 children, have experienced this with every one of my kids. And parenting is hard. It's hard work. Nobody gives you a manual, and we want our kids to do the best, and we feel like we've got perspective that they don't have. We want to help them get past some of the obstacles that tripped us up, some of the problems that we see them going towards.
So now let's fast forward to today. When you have a child that is ready to come out as LGBTQ, maybe you think that isn't the right thing. You don't want them to steer themselves in the wrong direction. Your opinions and what you think is happening, maybe it's colored by your beliefs or your fears or your hopes for what you want your child to be in the future. And you don't want them to be waylaid by reality. So you want to pull them back. No, that's not for you. This is for you. That's what you want to say. You begin in a way that says in your mind, I am helping this person to be who is going to be the best thing for them. In reality, you're saying also in your own mind, that's going to be better for them if they turn out to be what I want them to be, instead of what they want them to be.
And I feel like it's a line that we have to constantly watch because we want to help them. It's our job to guide them and to mentor them and to help them grow into all that they can be.
I suggest you consider this. What if our job as parents isn't to mold our kids into what we imagine they'll be, but to discover for themselves who they already are? Who is the realistic, who is the true person in them. If we approach from that perspective, knowing that ultimately they will be happier, everyone wins. They want our support. They don't necessarily want our direction. They don't want our dream to be their dream. It turns out a little bit different. So,
I mean, I think you and I had that. And even I had that for myself, that when you had your company, I thought, boy, I would love to do what you do. And I wanted to run that company. And I came in, and while I was working together with you, we had a great time. But as you went to retire, I found that I was trying to live your dream. And I couldn't manufacture the excitement for that internally. And so often we try to do that with our kids, that we think, I want you to be the best version of me. That's not who they are. That's not who we are given. We want them to be the best versions of themselves.
what's interesting about that is if you decide you want them to be your version of what they should be, you have 7 kids. If they all were your version, they'd all be the same. So now let's look at understanding the fixing mentality, which is sometimes the way we want to raise our kids.
That's right. Fixing often comes from fear. It's not that we set out with bad intentions to try to hurt our kids. No parent, with very few exceptions, is trying to hurt their kids. We want to do what's right. It's just like when you start off as a parent and you're trying to get your 1-year-old to sleep through the night. I heard somebody online, one of my friends, asking, hey, I have a 1-year-old that was sleeping through the night and is not anymore. Do you have any advice? And I thought, I ought to have advice. I've been through this enough times. But it's been too long now. I don't remember what we did. That's not really how it works. And so often when we come to this and we try to fix it, we're approaching it like we do with those initial problems of, well, if I try this technique or that technique, I can get them into the mold of what I want. That works when they're younger. But as they get older and older, we are not just giving them a coloring book and saying it's time to color now. They get older, so they take another step out. And now you have to ask them, what do you want to do? And then the next step, okay, and how do you want to do this? And they get a little older. They're 12, and then they're 14, and they're 16, and they're 18. And they're telling us, this is where I'm going, and this is who I am. Mom, Dad, I'm not who you thought I was when I was 6. I'm my own person now.
Sometimes someone, say at 18, 19, 20 years old, might be out to other people, but they're afraid to tell their parents. And when you do have that conversation, it would be unnatural often to fix that. Wait, I don't think that is the right thing for you. So it's that idea of suggesting change. You can't do that. You have to hang on to what my beliefs are because that's the right answer. What the recipient hears on that other end is, I think you're broken. I want to fix it. I think you're broken. That can be really traumatizing in itself.
Sometimes we look at our children and we feel like, I feel like you are broken and I want to try to fix you. But that's not okay. That's not the way that we approach as they are older, especially for adult children. We want to come in and say, I think you're making a really dumb mistake with this relationship. I think you're going about your life in the wrong way, and I just want to get in there and help you. And that comes from that place of fear. It comes from, I don't want you making this mistake that I think is really going to be detrimental to you.
I can remember your grandmother and your grandfather saying at one point, and I think they said it to all of their kids, when we have kids, which is their grandchildren, don't give them any advice on what to do. And only some of the time when they ask.
Yeah, that seems fair. And, you know, we're talking here about that urge to fix somebody when you're disagreeing with them about LGBTQ plus issues, that you feel like you're going to be wrecking your life. But it's not only that, because you can be the best ally in the world with the best of intentions. And this is where this episode is not just advice that we're giving because we have this figured out. This is really some research that we did because I, in some ways, as a parent, am going through this right now with some of my kids and will continue to. Any parent will.
Of course.
Recently, one of my kids wanted to come out in a particular way, and I, as the host of a podcast talking about LGBTQ issues, figured I must know how you should come out. And I gave this piece of advice and that piece of advice and this piece of advice and that piece of advice. And I watched as my child grew more and more dejected. This was actually over the course of a few days. I realized, you don't want my advice right now, do you? And my child said, no, I have to do this in my way.
Right.
And I said, you know what? I am really sorry.
So my suggestion to you and to everyone out there listening, if you're in a situation like this and you're not certain why you're uncomfortable with what you're doing, I suggest that you take a look at what your fears are. Is your fear that it's going to be unsafe? It's something that is going to put them in some kind of danger? Is it a fear of social rejection? Not just theirs, but yours as well? Because what are your friends going to say when they hear about something like that? Or maybe it's spiritual concerns. You've got those spiritual concerns because you were raised this way and this is what you were taught and that's where you were, and I have to follow that. Or maybe it's guilt. What? What did I do wrong that you're doing this? Did I not raise you right? Did I force you to turn in some area? Well, first of all, you're going to be concerned anyway. They're not going to turn out to be your idealized version of what you think your child is going to be. So in the beginning, you say, oh, that's not what I thought I had. It's something different. Okay, allow yourself to grieve about it, but then shift from control and trying to control to curiosity. This is where you really can become not just an accepting ally, but an affirming ally. That's where the great steps come in, and that's where the true support and allyship and friendship is strengthened. I think you and I found that when you first came out, Raya. You came out and we never broke our relationship. I had a lot of learning to do, but I was willing and able to do everything I could to learn more about it and to understand it because I wanted to preserve that relationship. And the good news is, not only did I preserve that relationship, but we've both come out stronger.
Yes.
And
we
that's
sure have.
Wonderful. Yes.
And really, this whole thing is our journey as parents from fear to freedom. And it comes really from us recognizing we could be wrong.
Whoa.
I know, believe it or not. You know, we joke about that, but the reality is I don't ever think I'm wrong, because if I thought I was wrong, I would change so that I would be right. None of us is ever intentionally wrong. And while we know we can be wrong sometimes, we don't actively go out thinking we're wrong. And lots of times we're pretty sure we're right and our child is wrong, and we really want to help them come to the right answer. That's our job as parents. But the older that they get, if we're going to make this move from fear to freedom, it means that we relax our grip on what we feel is right and let them find their own right. And that might mean choosing what ends up is not right for them at first. And then that's how they learn.
Love isn't tested in how we respond to what we hope for. It's tested in how we respond to what's real. And that is the whole difference.
So how do we rebuild the relationship after we've made some mistakes? Once we've gotten into this fear mentality, and now we've recognized, oh, I've gotten into this rut. How do we get out? We're going to talk about that after this.
I am Mark Zemer, a listener and supporter of Transcendent. I've been a Lutheran pastor for 45 years, and oh, what a journey that was for me to understand the LGBTQIA community and what that meant. I was so not understanding and hurtful. So this podcast is incredibly important to really educate and understand and to hold relationships together. So I urge you to consider listening, of course, but also supporting. You can go to transcendent.com and click on the heart with a support button. You can give as little as $3 a month, and you can cancel at any time. Important for all of us on this journey of understanding, keeping relationships together, truly being people of love.
So the goal is to repair, nurture, grow in our connection with our LGBTQ plus child. They're coming out, they're struggling, they're going through difficult things, and we want to be there for them. We recognize now at this point, it isn't our job to mold our child into who we imagine. We want to discover who they already are. How do we make that happen?
Well, the first thing you have to do is listen, and listen without an agenda. And if you want to ask questions, that's fine, but ask open-ended questions to help you understand what they're saying. At this point, they are the teacher and we are the student. They are telling us how they feel, what they feel, and what it is, and where they want to go. And we are out there absorbing and trying to understand where they are, not saying, but, oh, you have to be, oh, yes, but and how, are you sure about this? No, you don't want to say those kinds of things. Leave that out.
When one of my children was in middle school, they came to me and they said, I'm bisexual. And I said, you know what? I completely support you. I wanted to make sure that I approached this as a good ally. I said, I completely support you in this. Also, I want you to know you're young and sexuality is fluid and things can change. And don't feel like where you are right now is where you're going to end up. If you change in your journey, that's okay. And I thought, I'm really saying the right thing here. But what they heard from me is, what if this is just a phase? Are you sure?
Yeah.
And again, in this scenario, I felt like I really damaged my relationship. Later on, I came back and I said, I'm really sorry that this was not how I should have responded to you when you came out. A few years later, my child came back and we were having a conversation about this. And I said, and actually, you don't identify as bisexual any longer. My child said, that's right. You're right. I don't. And I said, but I was still wrong to tell you that might not be your orientation. And my child said, yes, because in that moment, I didn't feel like you were listening to me. I felt like you were trying to steer me in a direction. And that is the last thing that I wanted. So even though I was right, I was wrong.
When they decide that they're coming out to you, or they're saying things that are giving you an impression that that's where they're heading, or they've got certain rules and certain things they want to allow you to understand and be part of. You have to respect what they're saying. If they are coming out because they say they're going to be transgender, then respect their pronouns that they're asking you to use. If you make mistakes, I get it. And even if it's hard, work at it to show them you're behind them and you're doing what they're asking you to do, and that you want to be part of that. I still make an occasional mistake with you.
Very, very rarely. I can't even remember the last time. It's been a very, very long time. But really, at the beginning of this, it's coming from releasing our vision for them. I imagine you to be this person. And in my imagining you to be the person I wanted you to be, I have stopped you from being who you are. I'm not celebrating your authenticity. I am instead just tolerating it. That's
Good
not
point.
who I want to be as the parent.
Right.
So there's a few phrases we can say to affirm our child. For instance, we can say, I'm learning, but I'm here. We can say, you know, you don't have to be anything but you. We can say, thank you for trusting me with this part of who you are. Or as I said recently, he said, you know, I got off into giving you a lot of advice on how I think you should be. And I can see that that was really hurtful to you. And I'm very sorry. I'm trying really hard. I want to be a good ally. I want to be a good parent to you. And I want to support you. And I got off track and I'm very sorry.
When someone hears the kind of phrases you just suggested, it gives them a lot of comfort. And know when you say that is a commendation of your support. This is it. Yes, I'm here for you. And I want to be the kind of parent that is totally affirming. Help me to do that. A famous theologian said, make me a strong believer. Help me in my unbelief. That's kind of what we have there. It's difficult because you're growing. You're growing together. But it's very rewarding to do that. And when you get to that point, you will be so happy you did.
So one of the easiest ways to do this is to just acknowledge the tension and to be a source of hope. That we understand we live in a culture that is not always accepting of LGBTQ plus people. We can be part of religious communities that are still not accepting. The good news is we're moving in the right direction. We've talked a lot on this podcast about many churches that are finally coming around to become accepting. A lot of cultures are evolving now, so we understand that people are who they are, and thankfully we're moving in the right direction.
Oh, we certainly are. There are pride centers all over the country, in colleges and universities and high schools, continuing to be affirming. I'd see more and more of it all the time. As we said, you knew I had to get this in somewhere. It's like, for them, it's like being left-handed. It's not abnormal. It's a minority. But it's not abnormal. It's normal.
And that brings new meaning to this quote here. Let go of the need to be right and lean into the need to be kind. And that really is. Stop pushing for it needs to be like this. You got to use your scissors as a right-handed person, or you have to live your life the way that I think that you should live. You've got to go find a straight partner and get married in a traditional marriage and have 2.4 children and live exactly the way that I think that you should live. We let all of those expectations go, and we lean into the need to be kind, to be loving, to be accepting, to be affirming.
That becomes freedom for both of you. Not just freedom for them, freedom for both of you. When you are kind and affirming, it only thing it does is good things. It strengthens the relationship. Believe me, it comes out better on the other end than it was when it came in. How it was before all of this was great. Believe it or not, it gets even better on the other end. And I am a testimony to that, and so are you.
And I think as parents, we need to remember that we're doing the best that we can. You're not failing because you're struggling. You're growing because you're choosing to keep showing up. And I think of every one of us goes through a time in our lives where we recognize that our parents were just people. They're the same idiots as we are when we're at that age. We think, wait a minute, I'm 30 now. Is this what my parents were? When I think of them as 30, I think they were the smartest people in the world, and I know nothing. And then at 40, and then at 50, boy, when I think of you when you were at 50, I think you had the world all together, and I think I am nowhere near where you are. And I think my kids think that same thing, that as they come to ages where they're starting to be the age where they remember me at their age. They're not quite there yet, but they're pretty close, and every one of us goes through that. Well, we as parents can approach with that same understanding that just as our children will learn that we are just people the same as them, we have the right to be people that make mistakes, that screw up, that don't do everything right, because being a parent is messy, just like being a human is messy. But we keep showing up, and we keep approaching one another with love.
If you are someone who has a parent that is having a problem accepting all of this, suggest that they listen to this podcast. That might be very helpful for them. Maybe you are a parent who knows someone else who is going through what you've been through and come out on the other side. Share this podcast with them. Let them know that there are a lot of people out there with those same concerns, and that there are solutions, and there is a bright future ahead. As I believe Annie said, the sun will come out tomorrow. It always does. We want to thank you for listening to this podcast, and we want to thank you for being a supporter. I'd like to do a shout out to Kathy Arnold, one of our most recent supporters, and thank you for being a part of this. If you want to be one of our supporters, we have a lot of cost with this podcast, and it's continuing to grow and continuing to cost us more. We just have to get a little bit more fluid in order to do all the things we want to do.
We're grateful to have you coming back here week after week as we bring more positivity to your life. And with that,
we'll see you Monday.
Yes. And with that,
we'll see you tomorrow. No, we won't.
The sun will come out tomorrow.
Right.